Moving on then to other types of questions that are very common for graduates, the old competency questions. So looking at one specific one, how do you recommend people approaching, well, competency questions generally, but also, specific examples such as, can you take us through a time when you had a complex problem to handle, and how did you do it?
Yeah, so graduates often think competency-based questions are very easy because there's such a clear cue in it. You've got the competency written out, probably in your job description. The interviewer clearly has to give you massive clues to point to, this is the competency we are now discussing, and the kind of lead-in question that you've just outlined, which usually starts, tell me about a time when you demonstrated this particular competence. Whereas old school interviewing would say, talk me through that problem, and let you flounder a bit and draw out the sort of competences from that. Now, it is only superficially easy because sometimes the rules of the game are that you only have one shot at the answer, particularly if it's a panel interview. So that means your answer has to convey a story which shows the competence used at the right level, that it's related to the context of the job that you're going for, and covers all parts of the competence. And that's the bit that graduates often miss when you look at a statement of a competence. It's usually quite wordy, and it has lots of different elements to it. And that's where preparation comes in, because if you really only have one shot in a sort of 4-minute answer to cover all the bits of evidence that you need to communicate, then I'm afraid it is your responsibility to cover all parts of the competence. In other contexts, an interviewer will come back to you and say, well, tell me about this, or give me a bit more information. But highly structured interviews, you may not get that opportunity at all. So it takes a lot more rehearsal and planning than most people think.
Mm-hmm. And the common frameworks people use, such as a STAR technique, so the situation, task, action, and result, especially as you said, these competencies are flagged in advance. On their website they'll have a list of probably the 5 competencies that they're looking at, or the 5 values that they're looking at. So that these, if you've done the preparation, that these questions are coming, and then it's easy to think about a couple of answers for each of those questions, and to plot them into a framework of how to answer them.
Yeah, but again, one of the mistakes is to answer in the same boring fashion that the question is posed. Competencies really do constrain interviewers. They have to use something very close to a script. That doesn't mean that candidates need to. You can start your answer by saying, well, let me tell you about a time when, or that brings to mind an experience. You can have a much more chatty approach to it, pointing directly to the story, say a little bit about the context or the problem you were trying to solve, and getting to the meat of what you actually did. And that's why constructs like STAR are quite helpful, because they give you a kind of internal structure to help you remember to talk about your contribution. But that you learn that very, very fast. And the main thing is actually to prepare these pieces of narrative very, very carefully. Try them out on other people, rehearse them, speak them out loud 2 or 3 times, so that you know where the story ends and you know the right sort of phrases that you will be introducing. Mm-hmm. Somebody once said that being interviewed is very much like stand-up comedy, and somebody was interviewed recently on the radio saying that, why are you so good at this? And he said, well, it's delivering this for 1,000 hours. It's 1,000 hours of delivering stand-up. You learn how to get the timing right. So we're not saying do 1,000 hours of preparation for one interview, but we are recognizing that what you've got to do is to kind of imprint on your brain some of the material that you hope to be using successfully in the interview room.
Yep, no, that's a great point. And just bear in mind the common bugbear I had with competency questions, especially when it's relating to a team, is make sure you talk about what you did as opposed to what the team did. Remember, they're hiring you, they're not hiring the team. So don't be shy about talking about specifically the skills that you brought and what you contributed.
I agree.